Bill Goldberg just won the championship.
Oh, my God. Bill Goldberg with the spear.
There's nothing they can do to stop it.
I mean, this guy's out of his mind.
I said they'd never let us. They never let us. Okay, but like...
If someone asks Jim who is the greatest wrestler of all time, who would he say?
But you can't just say so-and-so was the greatest of all time ever at this.
I don't want to toot my own horn, but toot.
I may get the chair, but I'm going to kill him. No, I'm going to tell you what. I might just torture him, and then I'm going to kill him.
He had great matches all the time with everybody, really, though.
Let me be a mid-card wrestler. Let me just scramble around. Treat me like a piece of garbage. Feed me garbage.
Let me tell you something. I'm hungry. I am really hungry.
He doesn't like Colt Cabana. That's not a secret.
Never in my sickest dreams did I imagine that there would be other people taking dives on the concrete floors, committing human suicide on my behalf. Like I'm the patron saint of the six sons of bitches.
Hello, and welcome to the Patron Saints of Six Sons of Bitches, a irregular podcast. My name is Orchid Cugini of Violent People, and I'm joined by Colette Arrand of Big Egg. Did I get your last name right?
Almost.
Fuck. Shit. It's only been 14 years, you know? You think I'd figure it out by now?
I mean, I had a different last name for some of that, so it
That's
happens.
a fair point.
It happens.
I remember that we both had different names. That's the thing I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Yeah, we've both changed over the years.
Yeah.
Plenty of great new metal songs about watching people change.
Yeah.
Incubus. This is off to a great start. Welcome.
We are. Yeah, welcome. It was my job to say welcome, and you're saying welcome now. Yeah, no, to kind of just hop right in here, Colette pitched an idea to start a podcast with me about 3-4 months ago, and Colette and I are old friends. We have been old friends for a while. If you heard the introduction that, announced the launch of this project, you know our history. But, Colette, I think, why don't you just give the people a high-level overview about what you pitched to me?
Yeah, so wrestling fans, wrestling insiders, wrestlers themselves, wrestling bookers, everyone involved in the great sport of professional wrestling in one way or another is obsessed with one thing and one thing only, that being the question of who the greatest professional wrestler of all time is. When I was an editor and critic and journalist at the great long gone website Fanbyte, I started a project called The Greatest Wrestler of All Time, wherein I argued that literally every professional wrestler who has ever stepped foot in a wrestling ring and participated in a match and gone bell to bell for any amount of time has, for at least a second or two of their lives and our lives on this planet, has been the greatest wrestler of all time. So, I made arguments for the Bushwhackers. I made arguments for Steve Mongo McMichael. I made arguments for Toru Yano. I made arguments for Razor Ramon Hardgay, and more types of wrestlers of that sort, along with your typical picks, like your Bret Harts, your Stings, your Lex Lugers, whoever, Steve Austin, Terry Funk, obviously. And it made a lot of people mad. And when you make a lot of people mad, you have something that is worth pursuing, particularly in this field. I was going to say, the thing about wrestling fans, rarely are they mad. Yeah, no, you can't. It's tough to make wrestling fans angry. So for a long time now, I've really wanted to expand that thesis and really dig deep on this claim and this subject. And in order to do that, I need a friend whose opinions I respect and whose taste in wrestling I appreciate. And that happens to be my dear longtime friend, Orchid. So what we will be doing on this podcast, the Patron Saints of Six Sons of Bitches, is every time we do it, we will be building a case for a random wrestler to be the greatest wrestler of all time. Who we'll be covering from week to week, we will be discussing later. But it could be anyone. It could be, again, Bret Hart. It could be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It could be John Cena. It could be Kenta Kobashi. It could be Mystico. It could be El Grande Americano. It could be
Alex Wright.
Alex Wright, Grand Naniwa, Disco Inferno.
Alex Wright.
Yeah, when we get to the Alex Wright episode, that's going to be great. It's just like, hey, y'all fuck with WCW Saturday Night 1994 to 1996, and do you like seeing the same match every single time? If so, boy, do I have the greatest wrestler of all time for you.
I mean, I'm just going to be talking about Hog that whole episode. Various types
about
of
dancing, which showcases the hog. I'm doing the Alex Wright dance right now in my chair.
We both are. So is my cat.
He's amazing. A real argument for lime green undies was Alex Wright. So yeah, basically every time we do this, we are going to be building a case for whoever we're talking about to be the greatest wrestler of all time. And some candidates will be people you expect, and some candidates will be completely off the wall, and you'll think we're crazy. But I promise you, there are very few people who have wrestled, for more than 3 seconds in a wrestling ring that I am incapable of finding greatness in. And those few people are also eligible. Like I said, Disco Inferno is a distinct possibility. Hugh Morris may come up. If so, I'm doomed. But I'll do my best. I'll do my best. Second best fat man moonsault. That's Hugh Morris. Maybe not anymore though. I haven't seen any Mason Rook, but I hear he's got a decent one. So yeah, that's the podcast in a nutshell. We're not going to be ranking people. This isn't us coming to a determination as to who actually is the greatest wrestler of all time, because to me, much like somebody who has more than one child and is asked who their favorite is and they can't pick, so they're like, oh, all of my children are my favorite. All of the stars of professional wrestling are the greatest. And I and Orchid are going to endeavor to tell you why.
Yeah, and I think to kind of segue into a little bit deeper about like what this podcast is going to be about, I do think that one thing I want to do up front, and we haven't talked about this, but I think it's going to be important to just kind of say what this podcast is not going to be. So for starters, when we're talking about greatest wrestler of all time, we are not talking about draw. We are not talking about gate numbers. We are not going to talk about merch sold. That might factor in, but this is not going to be a quantitative argument, a place where we're going to be building quantitative arguments in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, merch designs matter to me.
That's fair. Yeah, that's very fair.
I bought a Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt very recently.
I would be blown away if we don't do an entire episode just about the Bullet Club shirt. That in its own way has its own case to be the greatest wrestler of all time, which happened. Speaking of which, short segue. Did you happen to see that segment? The gift that was, or the screenshot that was going around a couple of weeks ago of a guy was like admitting some like really like horrible things that he had done in terms of like sexual coercion, like in a podcast. So it was like some sort of like content streamer, but he was wearing a Bullet Club t-shirt the whole time.
No. I'm glad he wasn't wearing a gay community shirt.
Me too. But it just felt very, very fitting when you think about some of the members of the Bullet Club over the years.
Yeah, there have been some problematic ones. Yeah, what's up?
How you doing, sweetheart?
Allegedly.
Yeah, but that's just one thing up front here, is that this is not going to be like a Metzler-esque driven conversation. I am sure we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Dave Metzler in some way, shape, or form. And boy, oh boy, am I eventually planning on pitching a segment devoted just to things Dave says on Twitter. But just up front, from my viewpoint, I just kind of want to say that part of the reason why like I got really excited about doing this is that out of everybody in the space of wrestling, especially the folks who are writing about it with a critical lens, we've been friends for years outside of wrestling, but it works out for me that I just really appreciate how little you specifically care about things like, draw, kayfabe, things like world titles held in different countries. This is not going to be an opportunity, or when we ever do the Bubba Ray Dudley episode, we're not going to talk about how he is main evented for New Japan. To me, those things don't matter as much as at its core, wrestling is something that is meant to reach us at an emotional level. And I know full well that in terms of like the things that I value, that is what's important to me. So I don't know, like when you're thinking about putting together like an argument for greatest wrestler ever, and I've heard from Joseph that you can make it about anybody. What sort of things go into like what do you factor into your arguments?
It's a thing where like, so I've been watching wrestling since I was 4 years old. I'm 38 now, which means that I've been watching it for 34 years, which is a very long time. And a lot of my like core memories of like childhood, and young adulthood and adulthood are centered around how wrestling made me feel. And within that, like how specific wrestlers made me feel. So, you know, like I remember what it was like to be 8 years old and completely enraptured by Rey Mysterio Jr. I remember being 11 and seeing Mankind win the WWF Championship for the first time, and how that made me cry, and how it has continued to make me cry every time I watch it since then. So I think that it's kind of a thing where, you know, I have always been aware of the fact that like wrestling is capable of drawing out an emotional response from me, whether it's good, bad, neutral, like whatever. Like there is always like some kind of connection between myself and like what's happening in the ring, and that is driven largely by pro wrestlers. Like if it's not the wrestlers who are making you feel something and you want to give more credit to other people, I think that says certain things about like how you perceive the action of a match or the action of a show or whatever. But for me, like it is looking at like the response that you have to the thing, and then going a little bit deeper and like seeing how they do it. Like everyone who does wrestling has learned how to perform in the ring. They have their mechanical abilities, they have all this stuff, but it's like this certain weird blend of physicality, acting, body positioning, like being able to read where you are in relationship to a camera. Like it's so dense and like weird that like when you go and you write an essay about it, or you review it, or you try to explain it like I'm doing right now, like it's tough because you pull on one thread and it doesn't look like much, but altogether, you know, why is Steve Mongo McMichael somebody that I have historically responded very well to? Is like he is a wrestler who looks genuinely enthusiastic to be in a wrestling ring, and there is something so raw-boned and blunt about his execution of everything, because he is a former 15-year football pro who learned how to wrestle for the sake of like a special attraction match at like one pay-per-view, that like it's the fantasy of seeing a guy walk in off the street and be at least kind of okay at wrestling. Like that's the Steve Mongo McMichael thing. He's like a weirdly charismatic dude, cool ponytail, loved being in and around wrestling. And that's romantic to me. So yeah, that doesn't really, I feel like that doesn't really answer your question, except that like every wrestler has something different going on that I either identify with or that totally bounces off of me. And I would hope that at this point in my career, if you want to call it that, as somebody who thinks about and talks about and discusses wrestling in a like semi-pro or at least certainly public capacity, is that I've become adept at talking about those things, which I think will become more apparent once we start talking about the subject of this here first episode.
Oh man, will it, right? And Yeah, I asked that question largely because I do think that there are like a lot of different foundations or a lot of different strategies you can take when you're like trying to answer this question. There is one famous one called Big Laugh, which I'm not going to spend any time getting into. What I will say,
I don't know what that is. Even though you explained it to me once, I have no idea.
Which I loved, right? Because again, like you've been around these conversations so much longer than I have been. And for me to be able to say, here's a framework for having these conversations, you not knowing what the fuck I was talking about was beautiful. Because, I think just to give a little bit of my history, and God, we're going to be talking about our histories with wrestling during this specific episode a lot, I'm sure throughout the entire series, but this one especially. I think one of the things that like I've popped in and out with wrestling my entire life. It's some of my earliest memories are around watching Hulk Hogan. I don't know if I've told you this story, but I've told it to a lot of people. I do remember distinctly a period in 1990, right before the summer started, where I was repeatedly going to my dad and crying. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would like knock on my parents' door and he'd ask me what's wrong. And I would ask him, is Sergeant Slaughter going to run over Hulk Hogan with a tank? Because I thought that the Desert Storm match, that was my first no holds barred match. And my assumption was, I guess with just like everything around the Gulf War in my brain, I was assuming that what that meant was that Sergeant Slaughter is going to ride down to the ring with a tank and just blow a fucking hole through Hulk Hogan. And my 4-year-old brain was just not able to just like, just what the totality of no holds barred or no rules meant. I just assumed that there was going to be a lot of gunplay involved in some way, shape, or form.
I was also very literal like that, only like later where like, I think I've told this story a couple of times in different places, but like, my first wrestling pay-per-view was Halloween Havoc 97. So I was like 9. And the reason that I begged my mom to order it was because like DDP versus Randy Savage was billed as a quote unquote Las Vegas sudden death match. And I was like, oh my God, my 2 favorite wrestlers are going to kill each other.
As soon as the bell rings, one's going to drop dead. Yeah.
Like you don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, there is a beauty, I think, like especially like in your formative years, like when you're starting to understand what rules are and how that applies to wrestling. A thing where the rules are applied so loosely. It's I'm thinking a bit about my co-host on Violent People told me that his niece gets very angry that in AEW the ref starts counting like late, like once they leave the ring. I was like, yeah, absolutely. She has every reason to be upset about that. She's 9 years old and being told this is why you do things. And when you see those things get broken, wrestling's not that great in terms of the rigidity of certain rules. But to essentially say because this will quickly turn into a case for Sergeant Slaughter, and that I know you'll make that really quickly. Yeah. Just in terms of like my history with wrestling, there's just been periods where I've popped in and out. I feel like I've come back pretty firmly. Now, this is the second podcast that I've recorded this week, and the amount of hours I'm logging to watching wrestling is higher now than it's ever been. I'm firmly here. I'm not going anywhere. No matter how good the New York Jets get, this is where I spend my time.
I feel like we're pretty safe then, at least historically. Yeah.
I mean, too, I'm a Wizards fan as well, so I've been putting them off for the last 3 years, but I'm sure this isn't going to go well. Even with the bit of hope I have in my heart, some of that's placed in Anthony Davis's cartilage, so that can't end up going too well. But I came back a bit. I watched a lot up until Hogan retired from WWF the first time, like left to film Tropic Thunder. That was like the first time I kind of exited. I came back around Stone Cold's rise, stayed around until high school, like maybe like middle of high school. I think really what triggered me stopping watching was the ECW closing. I'm from New York City, and I was lucky enough to be able to watch a lot of hardcore TV in syndication on MSG network. So like I lived a lot of the ECW stuff while it was happening. Then took a really long time off, came back a little bit in 2013, whenever WrestleMania 30 was, Daniel Bryan, that was like the first one back. And like that was the first WrestleMania when me and my girlfriend at the time, threw on a Stone Cold Steve Austin documentary, and she became completely fixated by it. She was like, wow, I did not realize that this man was so cool. I'm sure we'll talk about Laura a lot during this podcast. But anyway, what happened around Daniel Bryan in WrestleMania 30 really kind of speaks to what matters the most to me when it comes to me building like these cases. And I think, like, gun to my head, if I had to decide how I am ranking wrestlers individually one by one and how I am building a case, the thing that I always stick out and the thing that I always go back to in terms of like what matters to me as a wrestling fan, what I value is, especially when we're talking about the totality of somebody's career, what I end up thinking about and what guides me through these conversations is the emotional response I had to a specific worker throughout the totality of their career in a variety of different contexts. So in some instances, that's like, I feel really blown away. I feel like some deep, like sentimental, emotional response. In other instances, it's more shock and awe. It's just the awesomeness, how fantastical something can be might be what like makes me feel, okay, I think this person might be the greatest wrestler ever. And I do think that might like bleed in perfectly to who our first subject is. Do you want the pleasure of introducing who it's going to be?
Oh, yeah. For this first episode, we are going to be making a case for the one and only Bill Goldberg, the man, the undefeated streak, the guy who showed up and beat everyone's at the time critical darlings for various WWE championships during the part-timer era of that company. Man who is undefeated in the country of Japan, a solid 5-0. Bill Goldberg, who may or may not have ended Bret Hart's in-ring career, depending on who you ask, and a real titan of anyone, I think's perception of professional wrestling during its hottest era in the late 90s, during the Monday Night War between World Championship Wrestling and World Wrestling Federation. He's kind of a one-of-a-kind wrestler, and he is somebody who I think inspires a lot of discussion for both good and ill as to where he stands in the course of wrestling history. And we kind of figured, we got to start out with a meaty one. We can't kick things off by talking about Tugboat.
Oh, we could have though.
We could have. Oh. He's got a sick dropkick Tugboat.
Does.
There's a really good Tugboat versus Earthquake match from before the natural disasters were formed. We'll get there someday, I'm sure. But
John Tenta is another human being who made me cry a lot when I was a child. R.I.P. Damien. Fuck, that hit me in the worst place at the worst time.
Tenta's an interesting case. He has one of the few.
Colette, no, you can't do it. Nope, I have to keep you on track. Nope, you can't do it. I have to keep you on track.
He has no matches against Goldberg, so we will not talk about John Tenta. Let us begin with a fixture of my childhood, and somebody that I have had the pleasure, I would say, of watching a lot of over the last week. Bill Goldberg, Orchid.
Yeah, and I know we're aiming to wing this a lot, but I do think that Goldberg's career is one that it really sets up just like walking through it, like in a really pretty interesting way. So I do have up front. Colette is known to ramble, as am I, but I am going to do the best I can to try to guide us through this conversation. And so for Goldberg, I think I'm going to do our best to try to guide us through almost the entirety of his career. Fortunately, it is robust, but it is not as like robust as somebody like John Cena or Tanahashi. We probably can touch on just about every highlight of Goldberg's career. And I think like probably the right place to start. And I will admit that like I am going to be giving a bit of a rambling history of early internet for folks who are not blessed to be elder millennials like me and you are. But I just kind of wanted to ask you up front, like, what were you doing at this particular time when Goldberg debuted? Because, man, were we both present and active watchers when he did. So yeah, like, what was your experience like at that time?
I was a WCW kid. Like they're like, I remember, you know, you could basically, like, growing up, kind of sort of in the early days of the internet, when like what you had most of was like AOL Instant Messenger, when you could hear the internet grind its gears to life. You could only like one of two things in an equation. You could like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd. You could like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. You could like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or the Sewer Sharks. And you could like WCW or the WWF. And I was a WCW kid living in Michigan, which meant that I was pretty far from the homeland of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, et cetera, which meant that I had an unfavorable position.
Okay.
But Goldberg was undeniable. Like, you could not watch Goldberg as like a kid in like elementary school, middle school, like whatever, and like not be transfixed. Like,
yeah.
I mean, people say, I know that a lot of the discourse around Goldberg is that he looked a lot like Stone Cold Steve Austin, which is, I guess, true. I don't know. Like, if you have like face blindness or whatever, I get it. But like, you know, he was completely different. Like, he was just a dude. Like, I don't know. I grew up watching early WWF tapes on VHS that like my babysitter had or whatever. So like the closest thing that I had for that was like old, like pre-Intercontinental title, like Ultimate Warrior squash matches, where like this muscled up freak would just come down to the ring and like smash the shit out of whoever was in their way. Only the primary difference between Ultimate Warrior and Goldberg is that Goldberg fucking rips. Like, his stuff is so good. His moves, which he added like one a week, like, it just seemingly like it was either like a bad submission hold, which is admirable, or like some insane power move, or he would learn how to super kick you like into oblivion. Like, he would just add moves every week. So like, it gave you like a little thing to like dig into, like, oh man, I wonder what Goldberg's going to get up to this week. Like, I wonder how he's going to fuck up this guy. He was getting thrown around. Like, the thing that I forgot about Goldberg was that he was taking like crazy bumps. Like, he took like a top rope belly to belly from the Barbarian. He like ate a no laughing matter moonsault in his debut. Like, that dude was like bumping around. He was a super soldier. Like, it was like watching a cyborg wrestle, and that was sick as fuck. Like,
before we get too deep into it, there being nothing like it, I'm especially curious from your point of view. I'm definitely, I will just be fully transparent. I did a lot of research before this podcast on AOL 4.0. So we're going to get into a little bit about that in a second.
Hell yeah.
Because I think that's important. I think that's so important to the context of Goldberg. Yeah. But the real reason, I know you're a WCW kid. I did not start watching WCW until maybe match 20 for Goldberg. So, but what I'm curious about from your perspective is like, what was it like watching WCW before Goldberg debuted at that particular point? And I know full well, like, I'm not asking you to do the full history. I just mean like at a micro level. Like,
I mean, it was
what were like the first couple of weeks before Goldberg debuted look like? What they look like?
It was, I mean, let's see, he debuted in September 97. So there was a lot going on, but like the NWO was like running roughshod. They had recovered from the summer of Lex. See, that's the thing too, is that Lex Luger won the title that August in my city, and that was like the greatest thing I had ever seen in my whole entire life. So I was riding high on WCW.
And then he drops it by Bash at the Beach, correct?
He dropped it at Road Wild. Or Hog Wild, whatever the motorcycle pay-per-view was called at the time. So yeah, like, it was a really interesting time because like they were building to Sting. And I would say that like what Goldberg felt like initially was like he was a heel, but like he was something like entirely new and in a way that was like different than like other new stuff that had been introduced to WCW. Like, cruiserweights were still newish. Like, they had really bloomed in like 96. But like, it was like the future of wrestling after the NWO, it felt like, was kind of being seeded because, like, here's all this shit that's happening, and then you have like this guy who immediately looks like he's going to be a thing. So yeah, I would say that like before Goldberg, WCW was doing really well, and that like really like the thing where he was like just sort of an enigma who is this mysterious jacked man who is like gonna pick up all these dudes and slam them like to the core of the earth, was like a really compelling like extra thing to the show. It didn't feel important until like, I don't know, later. Like until he stopped wrestling on like WCW Saturday Night and Pro and like Worldwide and stuff like that, right? Like when I could see him on the weekend shows that I was watching to avoid talking to my dad, like he was like, all right, cool, another guy. But like it was pretty clear that he was like going to be kind of a game changing part of the roster. Someone that like was going to matter in a way that like other dudes, like, you're like, who was I really into at the time? Like Juventud Guerrera and like Ultimo Dragon and like Chris Jericho and like even like Chris Benoit and stuff like that. Like those were dudes that I really liked, but like I'd never saw them like as like a threat to the NWO in the same way that like Sting or Luger or the Giant or DDP were. But Goldberg kind of felt like he could be almost immediately.
Yeah, and I think let me give you a little bit of insight into how I came into like watching WCW, and for full transparency, Goldberg is entirely the reason why I did. So to give a little bit of history here too.
You thought he was Stone Cold, right? You were like, what's Stone Cold doing here?
That was how it got pitched to me, right? Like, so I'm from Staten Island, New York, which is fully and firmly obviously a McMahon territory.
Yeah. Always has been.
Yeah, always has been. And I think like, I'm 3 years older than you. And I think because of that, like we were like when I was like 4 or 5, we were really like at the end of the territory era, like, 89, 88, around that era. But like, it was easy for me to just turn on, on Saturday night, or Saturday morning, right after cartoons, we would go right into WWF. And, I think that's like mostly how most of my friends ended up watching it. I think a lot of my friends ended up stop watching wrestling around the time Hogan left. And I remember like for a while, my dad used to always just give me little updates like at the breakfast table. And I'll never forget when Hogan turned. He was like, I just woke up ready to start my day. And my dad was like, Hogan's the bad guy now. I was like, oh, okay. And then I moved on about my life. Right. And then
it
when I
wasn't
did
like
get
finding
back,
out that the towers fell.
It felt curious, but I think like when that would have happened, I think would that have been 96 when he turned?
96, yeah, August 96.
Which is also a really, really interesting cultural year because you have the Summer Olympics. No, you don't have the Summer Olympics, but you have a lot of great movies coming out during that time.
You do have the Summer Olympics, actually.
In 96? No, you do have this. Yeah, that's Atlanta.
Angle wins his gold medals with a broken freaking neck.
Yeah, so you have the second iteration of the Dream Team that year. Mm-hmm. I believe Space Jam comes out that year. That's that summer. You also have the Mighty Ducks. Like there were just so many things like culturally that like had me like not paying attention to wrestling. It's not like it wasn't fascinating, but I was knee deep in thinking about how Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan were going to get along before I was even thinking about anything related to Hogan as a bad guy. So, but when wrestling does start picking up in like 97, 98, I do get back into it. I do start watching WWF a few months before, the Royal Rumble. And then like, so with me, I had 3 friends, 2 of which were really, really into wrestling. One of which like was like my best friend. Our personalities were completely mirrored. He got really into it. But the thing about me at that phase of my life was that I was a very early adopter to the internet. And not everybody in my school was. But I do have to give some history about AOL because I think this is really important to sort of kind of set the scene to like how different things are today than they were at the moment when like Goldberg was debuting. So AOL in 1995 had 5 million members, and by 1998 it had 18. The winter of 1998, so like January of 1998 was when they started the beta rollout of AOL 4.0, which is incredibly significant to me. It's like it sticks out in my brain as sort of really when the internet started shaping my personality. And I think part of the thing that I want to explain about that is that like in AOL 3.0, you did not have, everything was an Arial font, and you did not have the ability to change the color of your font. And that also meant that your profile, your AOL user profile, just looked very bland and answered like very basic questions. It had a limited character count to it. AOL 4.0 rolled out some of the initial points where you were able to stylize some things in some ways. Most notably in chat rooms, you could start changing the color of your chats. So like if you wanted to be like in a chat room and have it be all red, you could do that. Another notable thing from this time frame was people started building macros, like programmers started building macros into things so that you could sort of have like a gradient in your text. People were using a lot of ASCII images in chat rooms, like so that's those text-based images that like are made up by a bunch of characters. You could basically download a macro, press a button, and then all of a sudden you'll start, a picture of like Pepe Le Pew with his cock out. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't know why I went where I went, but I did.
I mean, that's just regular Looney Tunes.
That's a fair point, right? But one of the notable things about that is that this is an aside, but one of the earliest programmers, one of the most famous programmers of that era, was named Mark Zuck, who would end up becoming Mark Zuckerberg. That was kind of how he got his start into developing, was by programming macros in AOL 4.0. Aside from Mark Zuckerberg, this really was a significant moment because up until AOL 4.0, the internet was just something you used, and it quickly became a thing that not only could you use it, but you'd also use it to like sort of like create a persona. I basically think about AOL 3.0 as imagine as if you were using Twitter, but you did not have the ability to set an avatar, change your cover image, or even change your username more than once. If I remember correctly, your AOL usernames in 3.0 were only limited to 10 characters. My first AOL username was Tequila SR9. Shout out to Conan. But I'm very mad that there were 8 other Conan fans who got ahead of me to get Tequila SR as their username. But all to essentially say, on top of that, it's worth noting that if you wanted to see a clip of wrestling or a clip of anything, what you had to do was find a chat room that was specifically devoted to downloading media, and then basically queue up a bot that would email you anywhere between 1 and 17 different files that you could potentially download, and then put that code into the chat room. That would then lead to you being able to download something like an MP3. Rarely would it be a video file. That would, if I remember correctly, the first MP3 I ever downloaded was Eminem's My Name Is, and it took me 3.5 hours to download that. And I think that's kind of important to just set the scene, because there's a lot of things that were happening on the internet with wrestling at that time. GeoCity sites were being created, so it was really easy for somebody who was like an observer subscriber to drop some of the dirt sheet notes onto like a free accessible website. So like before I even knew who Dave Metzler was, I was reading Dave Metzler's dirt sheet reports. And then this was also too the era when a lot of shows were being pre-taped, and you could also get spoilers like you could read those on a Sunday afternoon if you wanted to. But what's also really important to take in consideration is that if you wanted to like see a video clip of a wrestler, it'd be really difficult. You could maybe download some photos of them, but actual video is different. So for me, I'm getting really back into wrestling. I'm really sort of getting obsessed with it. I'm probably in an E-Fed at this point. E-Feds are about to take up my entire life.
Oh yeah. Same here.
Yeah, I believe it, right? Like, I mean, we're both writers. I'm sure that was like our first.
That's where it starts.
Me too. Dipping my toe in creativity was in an E-Fed. But once I start getting into it and I'm like really getting excited about it, it's my friends who've been watching it for a little bit longer than me that are telling me all about it. And the pitch is, no, you actually have to start watching WCW. And to your point, there is no end. You had to be a fan of one, not the other. And I was just like immediately dismissive, like, oh, I don't want to watch WCW. That's where all the old guys wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
But then what gets pitched to me is like, no, they got this guy Goldberg. I'm like, that doesn't sound very appealing. And they're like, well, he just kicks the shit out of everybody. I'm like, well, Stone Cold does that. Well, they're like, no, this guy's different. He wears black trunks and he has a goatee and he's bald. And I'm like, you just described Stone Cold. Right?
He has a unique personal tattoo.
Right. I believe the first match I watched of his, I did just watch everything I watched every match of his in 98. I was trying for the life of me to remember which one it was. And I cannot. I wish I could. It was definitely before the Raven title change. But when you turn on Goldberg for the first time, he's described to you in this way. He just comes out and just beats the shit out of somebody and wins clean in a minute and 20 seconds. There's nothing like that. And there's no other clip. There aren't DVRs at this point. The only way to watch this is to actually just tune in live. And I think that's just so important to just kind of understand, like, the mythology of Goldberg is like, sure, you can go back and you can watch this stuff. And I am not the sort of person who thinks you had to be there to understand it, especially with wrestling. But to really understand Goldberg's significance, it is important to understand, like, this was a completely fucking different world from a media standpoint. And, yeah, when I saw that guy for the first time, nothing like it, and nothing since. And I will ask later if it's going to be possible to recreate it. But yeah, just that first run, I think you described it pretty perfectly. Did any matches stick out to you before the Raven one? I feel like that's like going to be like the first place where I really like, all right, let's spend a little bit of time talking about.
There's like more than a few for me. Like I think, again, it's just the his debut, like, against Hugh Morris is crazy. Like, it's not perfect. Nothing Goldberg does is perfect until much later. But like, well, yeah, I think that he's got, like, it's those early ones, like the first three that he does, Hugh Morris, Barbarian, Roadblock, like, all of those are awesome. Like, they're so good because they're just like, Goldberg takes, like, the best shots of two long tenured veterans and then, like, runs through them. Roadblock is a massive guy and he picks him up and jackhammers him no problem. I really love his the Starrcade match against Steve McMichael is pretty good, but for me, it's the second one, the rematch from Thunder, where Mongo starts things off by doing a suicide dive through the ropes. Yep. That's like a 3-stage suicide dive that I have christened the Mongo Suicida. Which I think Bailey or someone does. There's somebody right now who does the Mongo Suicida, and I love them for it. Like, those are the ones that kind of stick out. I'm a huge fan of Goldberg versus Steven Regal. Like, I think that is a very misunderstood match. It's unfortunate.
How so?
Well, for one, when you watch the early Goldberg matches, the idea of them is that here's this, like, overwhelming force who like beats everyone within 3 minutes. And when you watch the way that, like, every wrestler approaches Goldberg, everyone is trying something different out, unless they get beaten in like 30 seconds or less. But, like, you know, it's the template from, like, from the first match forward. Like, you see Hugh Morris is doing his thing. He hits his finisher. Goldberg kicks out. He's very surprised. Barbarian hits him with the top rope belly-to-belly suplex. Goldberg survives. Like, everyone is bringing their specific style to bear against Goldberg and failing, right?
And failing,
yeah. Regal is also doing that. But because Regal's style is so different from everyone else's in WCW's, and this is something that is true also of Regal's matches against other WCW wrestlers, Goldberg struggles against it. He struggles against it because he's not experienced and doesn't really know how, like, British mat wrestling goes.
Right.
But like, Regal is doing his job, and I think he's doing it effectively. Like, he is meant to be a big early test of Bill Goldberg. He is one, and he gets punished for it. And it's like, it's unfortunate in the sense that, like, I actually think that match is great. Like, there are a lot of Goldberg matches that, to me, like, from this period, that, like, would not feel too out of place in like the never open weight championship, like, peak era. And this is one of them because Sure. Goldberg is getting hit super hard. He's getting stretched out by Regal. Like, Regal is being not very cooperative, nor should he be. Like, he's trying to beat this person. Like, it's the closest thing to a like competitive, like a truly competitive match that Goldberg has, like until like deep into the run. And I think that it's interesting. Like, I just think it's a good match.
I'm with you. I think that one of the beauties of that match is that a lot of Goldberg's matches, especially the ones that go like over 2 minutes, they're fucking ugly. Like, they're gross. Like, there's nothing like there's no counter sequences. There's nothing similar to like an AEW like, you know, mid-card match or like opening match. Like, there's nothing about it that's like pretty. The bumps are disgusting sometimes. A lot of like not flat back bumps. A lot of no selling with chopping, but not or just striking. Not necessarily no selling in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to like Hulk through this or power through it. It's more just like neither competitors are on the same page to understand exactly how they're supposed to respond to this. But this is the match really where like it actually comes down as like showing something that's like something quote unquote the struggle trademark. And I think like I'm saying that now because I know the struggle is something that's going to come up a lot over the history of this podcast. Maybe not this one specifically, but the way that the struggle kind of plays out in there is there's sort of like uncooperativeness, which is not necessarily either the competitor's fault so much as it is them both trying to make sense of each other. And it is, to me, an incredibly compelling match. If you dismiss all the bullshit, if you like ignore all the out of the ring stuff about it being Regal's first match, like coming back after being on rehab, or like the WWF-ified version of like Regal being told to go in there and give somebody who can't wrestle a 6-minute match.
Right.
I do think I'm with you. Like, I just think that, highly misunderstood. Ignore what you've heard about it and just like devote 8 minutes to watching it. You're going to understand like a lot more about, I think, what makes both of them great.
Yeah.
Regal too.
I think so. Yeah. It's a good Regal match. Like, it is a good Regal match. He has this thing where like, by the time it's clear that WCW has lost interest in Regal, and I'll make this brief, like, he figures out a way to make himself a standout competitor in 5 to 6 minute matches in a way that very few wrestlers are able to, and that is one of his strengths, and he really brought it to that match. But I think that like for a lot of people, their first like quote unquote great Goldberg match is probably the Spring Stampede one against Saturn, which is like kind of similar, right? Where like you have Goldberg going up against a more experienced, like, I don't know, the word technical wrestling gets thrown around a lot, and I don't think that Saturn kind of qualifies as one, but he threw a lot of suplexes and he had like, you know, an armbar finish. Like, but he was like a stylistic test, right? Like, and a gatekeeper, like he's a gatekeeper figure. And I feel like those like Goldberg versus gatekeeper matches are very compelling. So like the Regal one is one, the Saturn one, which is the night before he wins the US title against Raven, which is like a beloved Nitro moment. And like, you know, I think that some of his stuff against like Scott Norton is super compelling. Like there's a lot of Goldberg to recommend, like all the way up until he wins the world championship and beyond. But, you know,
the Saturn match is a really good one too, because I do think at that point it is. And I kind of glossed over in Violent People this week because I wanted to save it for here. But the thing I really appreciate the most about Saturn's work in that match is that like he's figured out how to sell for Goldberg. A lot of people up to that point have been trying to do the whole I'm very intimidated by this guy. But Goldberg is so raw that he doesn't necessarily know, like, okay, like when I do a gorilla press slam, I'm not actually supposed to fucking duck my fucking elbows like lower than my chest. Like he's actually slamming the person on the ground. But at that point, I think agents have communicated enough to Goldberg just like, you're not supposed to kill everybody. And Saturn is at least from a position where he's like able to like spread out and take that bump without fucking killing himself. Now, Goldberg doesn't always remember. He himself has been honest about making the transition away from like wrestling, football, where you're supposed to hurt the person, to wrestling, where your job is to take care of the person. But I do think what's really great about that match is, Saturn just has figured out how to sell for him. And that does lead into, I think, the next match, which is what we're talking about. From my perspective, is the Ravens Rules match, which is the first time you're introducing the concept of a stipulation to Goldberg, right?
Yeah.
Like he has not had one at that point, and this is the first time where he's experiencing both like quote hardcore match. It's not particularly that, right?
No.
But what it does do is it opens up the door for the you know, I guess what we call the bloodline finish, but to me it's ECW fuck finish where it's like everybody and their mother is just like running out in the ring.
It's the NWO finish.
Yeah. And what a person to like kind of like play foil to that.
Yeah.
Like, the way he just destroys the entire flock is just, you
so
feel
satisfying.
the kinetics. Oh God. Yeah. It's like really, you just feel it like through your veins. I do remember watching that match. There were a lot of times like some of the matches we're talking about, like I'm in the process of like ripping my shirt off and just like slamming myself like directly into my couch.
Yeah.
But that is one of the matches I just remember like watching, and then the next day like going in and just rambling about how fucking dope it looked like to my friends.
It's so good. I mean, it's for one, like that match is it's a callback to Lex Luger's win over Hulk Hogan. Like not only did Lex have to like make it through a gatekeeping match in order to get the title shot, he had to run through the entire NWO before he put Hogan in the rack. And that's the same thing here. The thing that is so magnificent about Goldberg Raven is, and it's crazy how good WCW was at making these definitional baby faces. When they did it with DDP a year earlier, it was him just turning down the NWO shirt, right? Like, you know, putting it on, but then like hitting the diamond cutter. With Goldberg, it's everyone in that stadium wants to see this motherfucker win so bad that they crowd surf Raven back into the goddamn ring. And I know those are plants. It doesn't matter. I do not give a shit. That's not what this is about. Because they found the most podunk normal motherfuckers in Colorado Springs, Colorado to surf this bastard back into the ring to like take his fucking beating, which he had been avoiding all summer. It's perfect booking. Like, cause Raven, like you have to remember too, like Raven had spent like the early part of 98 like fucking over Diamond Dallas Page and fucking over Chris Benoit and being a whiny little bitch, and everyone wanted to see this guy get got. Everyone knew that like the only reason that he was winning was because of Saturn and because of the flock, like blah blah blah. So for everyone to like live this like moment vicariously where like this dude just gets fucking smashed and all of his friends get smashed, and like this like again crazy fucking freak. It is, to go back to the Ultimate Warrior comparison, it is the Ultimate Warrior beating the Honky Tonk Man at SummerSlam 88 or whatever in like 30 seconds, but actually good because Goldberg and Raven are both so fucking sick. Like they're both like at their peak, I would say, as performers. Or Goldberg is nearing his peak, but like Raven is definitely like at his peak in this moment. And like it's just so well laid out. Goldberg in being in his first hardcore match finally finds a purpose for his habit of slamming his head hard into lockers and doors and shit, because he takes those bumps on the chair like a lunatic. Like he's never gotten hit in the head with a chair before, to the best of my knowledge, and he's just like hurling himself. Like that chair gets fucking destroyed when Raven drop toe holds him into it because he doesn't know what to do. Like he's supposed to just hit it as hard as possible. It's so good. It's so good. It's perfect. It's a perfect moment of television, and it's one of two that Goldberg has in a 4-month stretch. Like it is like, how do you top that is like a question that is completely reasonable to ask, and yet he fucking does it.
I don't know if there are any memorable matches leading up to the Hogan match, but I do. So I'm going to let you be the one to answer that question, but I'm going to segue you into what is my favorite Goldberg match, and probably many people's favorite Goldberg match. I think you mentioning the chair shot is the perfect transition into it. In between this and him beating Hogan for the title, we get him wrestling the fucking god El Rey, La Parka. which to me is I have a memory of that match when like me and my wife were long distance. I was just getting back like before we got married, we were just dating. I think it was probably a few weeks before like us actually telling each other we had feelings for each other. I sent her a GIF of La Parka dancing. And so we had a lot of fun, like just being like, I was just like, babe, I know you do not remember this, but like I sent you a match. I sent you a clip of this match and then like had to spend like 10 minutes panicking to just be like, holy shit, I just admitted to this girl I have a huge crush on that I'm a wrestling fan and I chose La Parka to do it with. So like we watched it together and the thing that stuck out with her, we're married, everything worked out. She's a wrestling fan now as well. But the thing that stuck out to her is she was just blown away by just the way that that Goldberg just takes the chair shot, and that is one of the most fucking insane chair shots you've seen. And he fucking knows the entire thing, and then just destroys La Parka.
It's so good.
Oh fuck, God! I probably watched that match more than any other match in my life. And it never gets old. It never
it's
will.
A 30-second match, but
yeah.
I mean, the entrances make a huge point of it too, because I think that's like at kind of the beginning. It's not so much like if there's any great matches, because like there's like a Saturn rematch as well.
Yeah.
But like it's that like having the United States Championship in hand is where they start making it so that every Goldberg match feels like an event. Like I think that might be where like the security starts escorting him out, I think, because like at first
it's a Raven match,
like at first it's like not he doesn't have like the escort, and like say what you want about how goofy it is to have like a wrestler get escorted by like security to the ring, except for the fact that used to be how wrestling just worked. Like when you watch old matches from like the 80s and wrestlers come out, like they are usually flanked by at least 4 police officers who are keeping the fans from like, you know, shredding Hulk Hogan's t-shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's that La Parka match, because like otherwise you're talking like, all right, who's getting United States Championship matches during this time? Len Denton, Van Hammer. It's a shame that he didn't have a longer match with Yuji Nagata. Like I think all of his Nagata matches wound up being like less than 3.
Yeah, they were.
But you know, it's like they were kind of keeping him warm and like continuing to build momentum, and like there wasn't a whole lot happening in like up until the Hogan match. So not a ton to talk about, except that like, you know, it was an interesting period for WCW. Everything had kind of fallen apart after Starrcade 97. And he was like kind of like the shining light.
Yep.
While they were like fiddle fucking around with like Karl Malone matches and Jay Leno matches and all this other stuff. Like you still had like, you know, showing this dude crushing guys. Like what's even his first like NWO match? Like I think
Conan.
It Conan? Okay.
I think so.
It was either Conan or like Scott Norton. But like they kept them apart, like, which again, super smart. Like you have these two things happening in separate lanes, and it makes you wonder, like intrinsically, like what would happen if WCW got their shit together and made it so that Hogan had to wrestle this guy that apparently can't be beat. And like, I don't know if you watched any like promo segments, like kind of like leading into, the Hogan match, but like, I think that JJ Dillon announcing that this match is going to happen is like one of 2 times that JJ Dillon received like a hero's ovation in his entire life.
Yeah.
The other one being Sting for Starrcade.
Yep.
But yeah, like it's totally like they're just keeping him warm. Like, you know that something has to happen. It's part of me thinks that like he might have gotten the title too early, but part of me thinks there was no better time to do it than when they did it.
Yeah, I mean it's so hard to look back on, like, but I mean,
what
is
had
true
no plans.
at that,
they had no plans.
Exactly,
is the problem.
And,
like,
what was clear at that point was that WWF was like as hot as everything under the fucking sun, and everybody at the top of the card in WCW was stale, had been there for 5 or 6 years, and had creative control. So it was like the beginning of the no-win situation happening.
Yeah,
and I think that's like the beauty. I'll get into this when we wrap up, but like the beauty of it is that like so many things had to work out for Goldberg to even happen, and one of the things that had to work out was that like just the apathy, like at the top of the card. Like there's like, when you hear people talk about the mid card in WCW, all that's true. It's like, it's not what people were talking about day in, day out in like wrestling circles, but Goldberg was such a big part of it during that US title run. And I mean, it did end up becoming an event, like when, like the entrance is such a part of it, but that build of the crowd just chanting his name ends up becoming like the highlight. And like, in that period where you have to lean on flipping from one channel to the next. And I heard Chris Hero talk about this on a podcast with David Shoemaker that has long been taken down. That was just like one of the, right. No comment. But yeah, it's just, that was the one thing that like when I was like in my like basement, watching wrestling on a Monday night, the one thing that I was making sure that I was not doing was like I was listening for Shivani to tell me when the Goldberg match was. Yep. And I was not missing it, and I was like paying attention to the entire build up, and as soon as that match was over, it was probably right to WWF after that. So it really was a,
at which point they were showing a Goldberg match.
right.
which is something that I did want to ask you about like that as part of like the Goldberg mythos, I suppose. And considering that we're about to talk about him as world champion, there's probably no better time to do so. Do you buy into the propaganda that the Goldberg chant was piped in?
It's the first time I've thought about it. No.
Yeah, same here. It's real. Yeah. It's real.
It sounds it.
The WCW theme music compilation that came out in like 98 or 99, probably 99, did include Goldberg chants on it, which I think is where that came from. Also, like the Gilberg stuff, like having the crowd chant in his theme song, was like WWE like implying that this was not in any way, shape, or form like kind of a once in a lifetime like organic miracle run. Which, you know, you're welcome to do that. Like you take shots at your opposition. WCW certainly did it a million times for good and for ill. But yeah, no, motherfuckers love Goldberg. They love Goldberg. Everyone loved Goldberg. He's fucking Goldberg.
Yeah, I mean, and why not parry it? But no, I think to the other thing too, on top of that question, like all you have to do is look at the crowd. Like I don't know if you've seen an American crowd that consistently that hot for an opponent or for a competitor. Like it is unreal the way that guy is connecting like with the audience. Like, and all he is doing is running out there, beating the fuck out of people, and then just making random noises. Granted, I know there are some promos. I'm largely a in-ring first person. I did watch some for the specific episode. I probably will in the future.
I mean, his promos are nothing to shout about, obviously, but they don't need to be, because like he is just asking the same question that everyone has, which is who's next. Like who is he going to crush next? Like that's all you need.
There is a fantastic episode of Deadlock where they did the finger poke of doom. And that is the episode where Goldberg gets arrested. Let me back pocket that. Maybe we'll get there. Let's go to the main event. Let's go to the main event of this podcast, the main event of Goldberg's career, arguably. But at least the first time he's put in a situation to have a big match with a widely touted legend, I guess. Somebody who a lot of people feel a lot of different divisive things about. But July 6th, 1998 at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta, Georgia. Goldberg versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan. What will long be the most memorable episode of Monday Night Wrestling I've ever seen. Granted, there are a lot of good ones, but if there's one that I can remember watching and getting enthusiastic about and excited about, that is the one that sticks out in my memory. So just from your perspective, what do you remember about that night, if anything?
I mean, for one, I was watching live, of course. I remember thinking that I thought that he was going to lose. Like, I just thought that he was going to lose. Like, for whatever reason, my brain had been preconditioned to think that, like, when his back was up against the wall, Hollywood Hulk Hogan was going to have everyone come down, or, you know, he wouldn't lose, but like all the NWO would come down and beat him up. Apparently totally forgotten the Lex Luger match from almost exactly a year prior. And also like, you know, now, smart person that I am, I know that there's nothing quite so good as a summer title change. People think that winning the title at WrestleMania or like the biggest, quote unquote, biggest show of the year is the important thing. But like, nah, if you win the title during the summer, that's the true sauce. That's like the summer of Punk, the summer of Lex, the summer of fucking Daniel Bryan winning the title at SummerSlam and then losing it to Alberto Del Rio on the same night. Like, those are like moments in time. And like, it's because at least in 1998, you were at home from school. You can stay up late. You can watch all 3 hours of this motherfucking show if you want to. You've seen him steamroll Scott Hall, the big brother, I think, as Hulk Hogan called him, which is funny because he's the medium-sized man. Not too great of a match, but I think that this was maybe the beginning of WCW starting to play with Hall's real-life issues with alcohol.
It was.
So, like, he was, like, half inebriated for the match or something like that, which doesn't fucking matter. Like, at that point, Goldberg should beat Scott Hall in a match, no sweat. Unfortunately, I love Scott. But
I'm gonna push back. I think that's a good match, though.
It's a good match.
I quite like it.
It's a good match, but like, it's not necessary. Like, but it's like, it's one of those things where like, you kind of think like the build is over. Like, the build is over. It doesn't need to be there, but it is, and it's fine. And I think that if nothing else, it kind of goes against the idea that Goldberg was a 5-minute man, because he had already wrestled 5 minutes against Hall, and like here's another like 10 against Hogan.
8 minutes 11 seconds against Hogan.
Yeah, like, which is not an insignificant amount of time. I feel like a thing that has come to benefit Goldberg greatly is that the notion that a wrestling match's greatness lies partially in how long, how much of one's life it can chew up. Like, that is something that people have come back around on, and like, shorter matches are often found to be worth appreciating. I think this is maybe one of the longer ones in Goldberg's career to this point. Like, maybe the one against Saturn, like the first one against Saturn, might be a little bit longer. But he's in there against a much savvier operator than Hogan. And the test for Goldberg is not just like, can I make this look spectacular in the span of, 8 minutes? Can I maintain my mystique over that long a period of time? It is, can I measure up to a wrestler who has, at this point in his life, been the biggest wrestler in world history for 14 years, I think. Yeah, that's right. 14 years. He won the WWF title in 1984. And was the biggest star in wrestling from that moment forward. And many wrestlers who have been in that position have failed. It did not work for the Ultimate Warrior. It could have worked for Randy Savage, but did not, for many reasons. One of which is that Randy Savage is, in my opinion, better as a heel than as a babyface anyhow.
Sure.
It did not work for Lex Luger. It did not work for Sting. It did not work for anybody. Like, anyone who, like, it didn't work for Bret Hart, even though Bret didn't wrestle Hogan. Like, it's just one of those things where, like, the sort of passing the torch moment from Hogan to the next guy usually never comes off as well as you want it to in your head, either because Hogan is putting a knife in your back at the same time as he's putting you over, or because you just don't have the same thing that Hulk Hogan has. The thing about this match, though, is that Goldberg had it. He had it. He is every bit the cultural megastar and sensation that Hollywood Hulk Hogan is at that moment in time, and that Stone Cold Steve Austin is at that time. This match makes Goldberg, at least temporarily, the biggest draw. Like, I know we said the draws don't matter, but it made Goldberg like the biggest featured attraction in the entire world of professional wrestling. And he hadn't even wrestled for a full fucking year yet. Like, I don't know that playing 4 years of college football in 90s SEC Georgia, like University of Georgia, and like 1 year of the Atlanta Falcons adequately prepares one for the mental test that is becoming a myth. But Goldberg met that challenge and I think exceeded it. It is one of the most stirring moments of wrestling television that I can think of. It stands, like, it's up there with, you know, again, like Mankind winning the WWF title for the first time, like all of these, like Lex Luger winning the title, all of these like singular moments in wrestling TV history. And I think that it might be the best one just because, like, again, like, it feels like you are witnessing the christening of like the next 10 years of pro wrestling. That's not what happens, obviously.
Right.
But in the moment, that's how it feels. And that is, we're
impressive.
Dipping
the baby in the, we're dipping the baby in the water. This is absolutely as stark of a passing of the torch moment as you could possibly get. The closest you get there with Hogan is with Ultimate Warrior. That doesn't work for a myriad of reasons, but so many things go into this working in a different way. And I think to your point, right, like, it's funny. I wonder how much, since you said it, like, you're right. I don't necessarily think that, you know, a couple of years playing collegiate and very few years playing professionally, if at all, right? Did he even make it off the practice squad?
No, he made it off the practice squad.
He did? Okay.
But he got injured. I think he was like a 1 year washout.
That's what it was. Yeah, he got hurt really quick. But trying to figure out how like much I want to get into. There's something I'm going to say about Goldberg's like self-awareness later that will be critical. But in this particular moment, in the Georgia Dome, this moment in time, again, so many of the cards line up in the perfect way, and it's incredible that Hogan makes the decision. I think you know this, that Hogan was the one who pitched this in the first place.
Yeah. Well, he knows. Yeah. Hogan is like, again, a savvy enough political operator to know, like, oh, they're getting tired of me, brother. I need to take a couple months off, and then he runs for president, quote unquote.
Right.
Yeah, he goes away without going away. It's the same deal with the Lex Luger situation.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, though, with this match, to your point, is that it is from start to finish. And that's part of the reason why I'm okay with the whole match, is that what this crowd was doing was they were sitting around waiting for 3 hours for one specific moment, which was for that crowning achievement to happen, for the torch to be passed. And shout outs to the rest of this card, but I don't think a lot of people are really excited about the Public Enemy versus Alex Wright and Disco Inferno. Maybe they were. I would be. I love me some Alex Wright. And man, if we ever do an episode about Rock, am I going to have the time of my fucking life? But by bringing him out twice for two different ass kickings, what you end up doing is just sort of like extending and building that moment even further. It's almost like there's this mini build in that entire episode, because there are good matches on it, or matches on it that you think would excite people, but really you can just tell this is a crowd that's ready to blow up. And like when you watch the match on YouTube now, the Hogan match, that it starts with a pan of the entire arena, and there isn't a single fucking person in there who is not ready for this fucking motherfucker to lose. And I don't know if you're ever gonna have that again, especially like on a Monday night, especially like in a fucking stadium show, no less. I don't care if it's the right place to do it, if like saving it for a pay-per-view is more important. Like what that moment ends up being becomes so much bigger and so much better than so many other moments that hold up to it. It's probably the greatest world title It's probably the greatest television world title change in American wrestling history. I'd be hard pressed to find another one. I could just poke holes in the argument. And so much of that too is, in full honesty, I think this is like the Hogan match I enjoy more than any other. Maybe WrestleMania 3 might be up there, but it's almost like Goldberg finally like looked at Flair and was like, oh, I could stooge a little bit, and that will actually do a lot to get my opponent over.
Yeah, it does so much.
It does. It's like, this is the first time he loses clean, I think, in 8 years. Is that right? Do you know? I did know at one period of my life. I can't remember now.
Yeah, I think it's the first time that he loses clean. Well, yeah, because I guess I wouldn't count the Lex Luger loss as clean because Luger has to beat the entire NWO, but like he does submit. He gives up.
Yeah.
Which I think, like, you know, this isn't a podcast about Hogan, but that is like kind of like the one thing that he did figure out about turning heel, is that it did allow him the luxury of being able to lose every now and again.
Yeah.
But yeah, this being like a clean loss, I think really like solidified things. And also, again, in front of a fan base that knew him, like, you know, you couldn't have picked a better spot for this match than Atlanta, just because you're an hour down the road from where he played football collegiately. You're in the same stadium where, like, you know, not successfully, obviously, but like, you know, he played for the Falcons. Like, he's a hometown guy, for someone from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And like, it's just perfect. Like, the moment is set up on a tee for him to hit it out of the park, and he does. And the fact that it's set up on a tee doesn't, like, makes it sound easier than it is, because more often than not, you set these things up and people whiff. So yeah, giving, like, you got to give credit where it's due to both Hogan and Goldberg for how perfectly conceived of and executed this match is. I think that it is, I mean, 1998 is a very tumultuous year for pro wrestling for many reasons. This is one of the best moments from it. One of the absolute best moments from it. Like, so much so that it could have, and, you know, it's a shame that it didn't, but it certainly could have stopped WCW from the spiral that it had entered after Starrcade.
Thank you so much for listening to the debut episode of the Patron Saints of Six Sons of Bitches. Colette and I had so much fun talking about Goldberg. We also are pretty adamant about doing everything we possibly can to keep every episode of this podcast under 90 minutes. So we made the executive decision after recording to split this out into 2 parts. Some episodes we might be able to cover, one wrestler in 90 minutes. Knowing the two of us is probably going to be few and far between that actually happened. So next week we will drop part 2 of this, where we speak a little bit about Goldberg's WCW World Title reign, a little bit about his career in Japan, and very, very briefly talk about his time in the WWE. So check that in your feeds, click the subscribe button, and we'll see you next week.